vision that James Cameron had for what these characters, what this universe, what this place would look like. That was around Terminator 2 era. Regardless to say, James Cameron has been working on this for years. It being the bigger picture, Avatar. And, you know, far be it from me to be like, yo man, that's a lot of things that you're really into. So you're gonna make it. It makes sense, right? You get to a certain point, you hanging out with Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet, and then you make Titanic, bam, that's one. You come around, you make your original film called The Terminator, and you make one Arnold Schwarzenegger the talk of the universe. Bam, that's another hit right there. But the hits just keep on coming and coming. This guy, time after time, even knowing how the story of how certain films were made and how they had to guerrilla film certain scenes, because back then nobody wanted to hire James Cameron because he was a very unique individual. And unique is the right phrase, because it takes a certain type of mind to go through a fever sweat and imagine the T-800 skull, chrome skull appearing out of pits of fire. And that is how he got the idea for the Terminator. But it wouldn't be until years later that Cameron would fully flex his might, his creative digital CGI creative might, and we'd get what we have today. The third installment of what is the Avatar series. Now, right off the bat, I'll just go ahead and talk about it. Cameron has already mentioned that if things don't go too well with part 3, that he's more or less settled with the idea of not making 4 and 5. He wants to go all the way to 5. We'll see if Disney lets him sleep after that. But to say that we're at a point, and if we like this point or if we're okay with this point, this could be the end point. Fairly healthy thing to be, right? You get some sense of like, what's the word? Disassociation with your art, your piece of resistance. And you allow it to breathe and you let it do its thing, and you don't have to make a shitty Star Wars episodes 7 through 9. But if we know Hollywood, if we know movies, if we know cinema, then we know that while Avatar 3 might not make as much as Avatar 2, I completely see Avatar 3 making more than enough to justify its production. And even if they don't hit the numbers they're quote-unquote shooting for, I can still imagine Disney executives being like, no man, we need that money, make more. So we're here to talk about Avatar, Fire and Ash. Episode 3, if you will, of the Avatar franchise. And normally, you know, if you think about trilogies, Spider-Man 3, Empire Strikes, oh, that's number 2. It's usually where we get to see things either get over ambitious, over zealous, or we start to see how the cogs are no longer as stable and sturdy as they used to be, right? Again, the famous example everyone talks about is Spider-Man 3, where that was just a accumulation of too many ideas, quote-unquote interesting ideas. And, you know, for better or worse, we got Tobey Maguire dancing in goth vibes, and hey, I was there. So, number 3. It's it's a little difficult to just say, man, we've done the thing, we had fun, we've peaked at it. There's no way we can come back from this, and like we should just let it die, right? Certain people can start feeling fatigue. We know superheroes have hit that echelon of superhero fatigue already. And even with the releasing of Doomsday, Avengers Doomsday, a lot of people still aren't like on board with like, what the heck are we doing with the Marvel MCU these days? And the short answer is money. Krabs has his own movie out right now. Money. But in that, in the hands of a established, responsible director known as unlike James Cameron, we can still hold on to hope that there is at least something that is really being thought about, or maybe preparing for the future, or trying to leave certain plot points behind so you can make sure that you're hitting those plot points now before it becomes later, and then your whole minds and opinions change about certain plot points. But we got it. We got Avatar 3. What is Avatar 3? The simplest way I can put this, just being frank with y'all out there, well, is I've been playing video games since the day I was born. I'll say that. And I've observed graphics, I've observed technology, I understand CGI, I understand mechanics, I feel like I have a grasp on Blender and the styles. I don't do it, but I've opened up programs and I'm digging around just to see how things operate and whatever. So the easiest way I can put this in like a completely like unobjective format, hopefully, is the idea that we are officially at a point where video game CGI is what Hollywood expects from its, or what Hollywood wants in its movies. And this CGI fest just makes it super apparent. Because I'll tell you one thing, you probably can't see it here, but I think that was one of those spoilers that they didn't really want to talk about it because they wanted to keep it a secret. Dead ass. Avatar Fire and Ash 3D format in the IMAX, at least that's what we saw it as. That shit was running 120 frames per second. Either like the smoothest 60 frames I've ever seen in my life, or straight up 120 frames per second. Cause you had that after effect of what is called the soapbox effect when you put it on your TV or digital blurriness and all whatnot, whatever would you call it. That is the movie. That is the movie through and through. You have blue people that are CGI running around in a blue universe that is CGI. They have water everywhere, that are fighting wars against CGI machines that are CGI. And it is impressive. It is genuinely impressive. They have close-ups, you see pores, you can see facial features, you can see scars. Where we are at, aka where James Cameron is at with his whole digital art, is genuinely impressive. If I didn't own a PC and a PS5 Pro, and I wasn't such a technological nerd or whatever, geek, because I see it and I understand it. I know why it's working. I know why it looks like that. I know how it's so smooth. I know how many frames it's running technically. And and I'm there to admire it. I see the lens flare, I see the shadows, I see all the texturizing, I see everything looks great, detailed, impeccable, right? Amazing. It does. But guess what? While I enjoyed the story, right? We're a family of Solis. We are technically half breeds, quote unquote. We are half of the human world, we are half of the Navi world. But regardless, our culture has raised the children and the parents. And it is a strong story. It does go through a lot of points that like really hit, and certain moments really do bring the emotions, you know, as something that you would expect from Mr. Don't let go, Chuck. And you're more than welcome to, like, you know, lock in and like empathize with the characters and try to get more out of the moment by, you know, sympathizing and going through the emotions and trying to insert yourself into that film, because, you know, IMAX 3D, it's all good, immersion. Or you can really just go there to have a good time, and, you know, certain plot points do certain things, certain characters at a certain way, and it's not all not funny, you know, is the best way I can put it. It's almost awkward, almost laughable at some points, and sometimes they actually hit. Sometimes everything works out, and at other points you're fucking feeling emotional because that's how they get you. But again, we are at a point, right, where James Cameron is happily making his technological CGI fest. Good on him. He's also very deeply into the story. We're at the third film. We've rehashed the whole topic of we as humans are there to colonize this space planet, and we're just being assholes because we want the money from the space planet, and we're gonna try to push out all these native people so we can keep the money and be America. Industrialization, capitalization, capitalization, you get it. So those plots are all there. Those plots are being implemented again. So you could see where it kind of starts to get boring. It can, and it starts to get boring if you are like there to be like, yo man, what are we even doing here, James Cameron? You know, it's funny. There's certain scenes. This chick right here, this chick right here. Everybody likes a freaking loose rocket, but it just really feels like someone said, okay, James, do your thing. Just go. Just go. Here's the money. We made the money. And honestly, it's him. He's the one who's paying for his own project. So again, the whole point being is that who the fuck am I to be like, James, what the fuck are you putting in your movie, bro? But at the same time, it's like, oh, okay, you want that in your movie. I get it. Hey man, I'm not judging. I'm just curious to know how this happened, who signed off on this, and what it means to you, Cameron. I don't need to know. They're all rhetorical questions. But those are questions that I ask myself when watching films, because again, the art doesn't fall far from the artist, and just to see how prestigious his career has been. He's only done 9 films, by the way, or 8 or 9 films. It's when we talk about Tarantino being like, oh, I'm only gonna do 10 films, we go like, oh, that's crazy. But James Cameron, back to back, man, come on. And it's now we get to the point, right? This movie is about family. We love that. I grew up in a very close-knit family. I love my family. I was raised with super ingrained family values, and that's the way that I am. That's the reason that I am the way that I am, and blah blah blah. So I've like to say that I've gone through the journey of life with said family, you know, you sisters, brothers, parents, both. And you get to a point, at least one gets to a point, where you're obviously on a different path than what everyone else is doing. And that's natural. That is, tends to happen. And if anybody knows anything about wolves and like how they go out, they find their own family in the wild. That is kind of the process if we were putting it on that scene. And it gets apparent at a certain point. You know, you hit the years start hitting, and you start getting older, and you start looking behind you, and you start realizing everyone's getting older. Everybody's getting older. And getting older, unfortunately, has its natural consequences. One of them being, I don't know, let's call it dementia. But it's not funny, obviously. But it's like the idea of that the brain is so unique in that it does everything. It runs everything, it handles everything. But at a certain point, at a certain age, your brain can no longer keep it up, cannot be as powerful as it used to be. And we get a mental decline, cognitional decline. And that is very sad. That is very sad if you know exactly what happens at the end of that journey. But we bring it back to a point where you grow up, you look behind you, and you realize that your parents are getting older. Again, so in a family, at least in families, you come to a point where the son, the daughter, family members, the younglings end up becoming the parents. Right? And obviously that's a stretch. Obviously parents are parents, they're gonna be the parents. But that same idea of care, protection, love, appreciation, patience, love, understanding, that was supposed to be given to you from a young age, right? From your parents, from your guardians, comes around full circle, and then you start to lend that or represent that or become that sort of figure in their lives as you slowly start to realize that they're getting older and they might be losing it. They might be acting a little different.